something that's interesting that you can do. I'm just wearing my hijab with no pin, just chilling in my house. And I was like, something interesting that you can do is study the history of Islam. If you have anything to study, study the Khalifa, study the Ottoman empires, study how Islam spread. And as a teenager, you should really study also like the contributions of Islam to the modern world because we are truly modern, a modern civilization, a technologically advanced civilization because of the contributions of Islam, because the way the Prophet taught how to teach and make other people leaders and thoughtful and scientific. It was a scientific revolution. Islam brought a huge scientific revolution. And one of the things that I want you to ponder about is the Arabic language and how it's structured with a root and, sometimes a suffix and a prefix, and how the root has different ways that it could be, have different meanings depending on the harakat and how the vowels are structured. And then the language of medicine, right? Just if you're in the medical field, just think about the language of medicine and how closely it's related to the Arabic language and how the modern medical world advanced so much just because it codified the language. Like imagine a person had to memorize a new word for every thing. The fact that it has a prefix and a suffix and a root and you can decode it and it's so easy to structure in your mind and understand just made it so easy to expand the knowledge and more people to understand different aspects and to build on the knowledge from radiology to coding to being an LPN to being a doctor. Like the language is so codified and so easy that it's easy to study medicine the same way it's easy to study religion and when you speak Arabic. So there's such a link, and definitely, this is borrowed. This structure of language is borrowed from Islam. It's borrowed when the non-Muslims learned Arabic because the Ottomans, like the world learns English today. Like during the time of the Ottoman, what was the language most people probably learned, you know? And so they realized like, hey, this language is very interesting, and it was borrowed. And that's what innovators do. They borrow, they learn. And Islam is about that. It's a business, it's transaction, it's, let's trade, like let me learn from your culture. And what did Allah say? We diversified you. He basically taught us that he made us different so we could know each other. And what is in that knowing of each other? To learn from each other, to benefit from each other, to take the good and help each other overcome the negative, right? And so, yeah, this is definitely borrowed from Islam because if you look at its history, where did it stem from? The Greeks were not always talking like this. The Latinos were not always talking like this. So where did they learn to use a suffix and a root and a prefix? The Arabic language, right? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, especially how the root has specific multiple meanings. That's the interesting part. Because in the Arabic language, one root, like the root of something, has multiple meanings depending on how the haraka go. So this is something you should study to have a connection to your history, because you will not know who you are unless you know your history. Like, know your history. Know your history. What does it mean to be a Muslim? What did you contribute? You will find so much happiness just in knowing how much society would be so, the beauty of society would deplete. The technological advances, everything ties back to Islam in one way or another. The Ottoman Empire, they try to say, is a defaulted empire. It was they say negative things, but really, it was, just look into the golden era of Islam. Like Islam really contributed. And, we're so humble. Like, people don't go around just waving that in people's faces like, oh, Islam contributed this, blah, 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 because we're humble. And there's a beauty to humility. But sometimes we do have to talk about the contributions to remind ourselves, there's a good in our nation that is hidden and that we don't talk about and that should be talked about for the generations so they know who they are. It's not to say we're better than you or, we did this and you didn't do anything. No, no, no. It's to say this is actually who we are. And, this is also the good that you bring and recognize the good that other people bring. But like they say, like, don't dim your light. just to make someone else shine, because other people are shining in different ways, and Islam is shining in this way. And we hold down scientific science, like Islam holds down science and technology, like, and that's a fact. Math came from, the algorithms came from a Muslim source, and the photography came from a Muslim source. Like all the initials, like basically the originals, the origins of certain advances came from Islam. We wouldn't have a camera today if it wasn't for a certain Islamic scientist. So you don't know your history.